is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donnie, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
It is the Last Minute Blues Podcast. Donnie Fandango joined in studio by Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, also handling your pre, post-game, and inter-period broadcasting for On the Blues Games. What am I saying?
Dude, inter-period sounded so professional.
I was on a roll, too.
You know when
I was feeling so good about it.
You know when your professor in college uses like a really like uppity word to you and you're like, man, I don't know what you just said. You might have insulted me, but I appreciate you using big words like that.
As a person on the radio, you know where you feel like, man, I've got this, and then all of a sudden in your head, it goes, oh, I don't know how I'm going to, I don't know where I'm going with this. That is what just happened in real time.
You got to inter-period. You knew, like, I'm going to throw inter-period in here, and then, like,
Once it was that, the train was off the tracks, man.
Most of my pre- and post games, Donnie, are like Michael Scott. Sometimes I start a sentence, I don't know where it's going, but I'll figure it out as we go.
Well, JR is on the road. His son has a big hockey tournament in Chicago this weekend, so very much good luck to the Rutherford clan and hope that they do really well. I was talking to JR off air the other day about, his son playing hockey and like the cost of that sort of thing.
Oh, man.
I think I'm thankful that I don't have any athletes in the house. It's crazy.
I'm very worried about that. So I was never like the athletic. I always just did school sports. I did basketball. I did soccer, and then once I got to high school, I tried football and was terrible at it. I never did, like, outside sports because I wasn't any good, which I'm very thankful, and I think my parents are probably thankful for. I'm very worried that one of my daughters is that way because how the hell do you afford that these days? Like, parents that could pull that off, props to you. My daughter's in dance right now. She's 3 in dance, and it only costs me, like, $100 a month. And I still am like, this is too expensive.
Well, and the thing is, man, with 3 of them, is that you'll have 3 different activities, which will probably all get more progressively expensive as they get older.
Donnie, I don't appreciate that. I already have anxiety.
Good news aplenty. How about that?
My anxiety was like a bonfire, and Donnie just walked up with a truck of gasoline and was like, here you go.
Right on there. So, all right. So we have all of this going on. We have JR out. We have not had a podcast since Brandon Saad and that whole situation last week, but I feel like there is just an absolute ton to talk about with this team, Alex.
Yeah.
So I think where I want to start first is we'll talk about Brandon Saad, and then the news yesterday that Brayden Schenn is potentially on the trade block, which is very surprising to me. So let's start with the Brandon Saad thing first, because as much of a tried and true professional as Brandon Saad was and has been throughout his NHL career, he just was, I don't know the best way to say it, he was just not locked in here for the last few months.
He wasn't playing up to the potential.
He really was not playing to what we were used to seeing from Brandon Saad, but he he does the Blues a huge favor.
Yeah.
An absolutely massive favor. I guess there was, talks that he would go to the AHL when he cleared waivers. Well, he wasn't going to do that. So they worked out this outright release. And so the Blues walk away from a lot of money. How much is that?
$4.5 million. So, like, the money, I believe, is $3.6 million next year. I think that's what Elliot Friedman reported. But the cap hit was 4.5 because of the deferred monies and how those conversations go. But yeah, you get cap relief, $4.5 million next year, and then this season it's the prorated. So I think it was probably taking, like, the 4.5 cap came off, but you're halfway through the season, so you're probably talking about you saved about $2 million in your cap space because of his contract termination.
How do you handle this, man? My honest feeling, just as a fan, is that guy knew that there would be other teams that would bid for his services if he was a free agent or was able to be gotten at a very cheap price. They weren't going to pay the $4.5 million, but do you just think he got tired of being here, got tired of losing? What do you think it was?
I think some of it was probably frustration with how the season has gone and how he had played, to where it was like, man, this is just not going well for me. And, we know athletes have pride. And I don't blame him. You're a consistent 25 goal scorer. You're 32 years old, and you have, 6 goals, and I think you scored it in 3 games.
Yeah.
And so for him, even after he scored that hat trick in the game, I think it was the Ottawa Senators, he's like, look, I can play at this level, and he's like, I've established that for how long I've been in my career. So originally, I probably think it was the initial reaction of like, hey, we're going to send you to the minors. And it's like, geez, all right, yeah, I'll go down there and try and work through this. And I really wonder, I have no reporting on this, but I wonder if the Blues told him, like, look, go to the minors, get yourself right, and we'll see if we can find a trade person for you right now, because we can't find anything right now. And they put him through waivers. He gets cleared. And to me, I always think when you're an athlete and you clear waivers, it's that shock of like, man, nobody wants me.
Yeah, man.
Nobody wants me. But then the next step to that is teams probably contacting Saad's agent saying, look, we want you. We can't afford to trade for you for $4.5 million next year. So we'd love to have you. We just can't make this work on our cap. And then it gets to the conversation of, okay, do I walk away from $4.5 million? Because that money's not going anywhere. The Blues probably explained to his agent, look, we're not eating any of your salary. You're going to go in the minors and we'll figure it out from there. So that's where I think it probably came to the point where it's like, look, I'm a prideful player. I don't want to go play in the minor leagues, and I can't blame him.
Right.
He hasn't played in the minor leagues since like 2011. They were showing babyface Brandon Saad all over Twitter, and it's like, I don't want to go do this. I don't want to go have to work my way back, because at least talking to guys who have played in the AHL, once you get down there, it's hard to come back. So I got to think that was part of it. And then from there, when you get a team that says, look, we want you, we just can't afford you, it's like, all right, well, we'll walk away from the money so I can continue my career in the NHL. And if you're him, I go to a team that's probably a competitive one. Vegas was the one we found out that wanted to bring him in, but Toronto was interested. Yeah. Colorado was interested. Friedman was reporting. If you're him, I'll go to a cup contender. I'll go contribute, and then I'll reset the market for myself once again.
You're rebuilding your own stock, right? Yeah. And he's given the opportunity. I mean, and I would have to think that his agent was getting some of those calls saying, hey, we're interested. We just can't pay the $4.5 million, which probably led to him going, all right, well, this is going to balance out in the end for my money and things, and I'm going to end up in a better spot.
And I've made a lot of money in my career, so what do I want more? Do I want to get paid, or do I want to go play hockey still? And I think that's what the conversation was. Now, I kind of chuckled to myself because my brain always goes to this. I also wonder if Brandon Saad agreed to play in the minor leagues and then went home because he just had a newborn baby in the beginning of the season.
That's
Remember,
right,
he missed a couple games.
Yeah.
And so part of me wonders if he goes home and tells his wife, like, hey, they're sending me to Springfield. I'm going to be in the AHL for the next 3 months. And his wife was like, no, you're not. You're going to walk away from that damn money so you could be home with us, which, I mean, coming from somebody who's got 3 kids at home, I can't even fathom the idea of being away from my family for 3 months. So I think it was a whirlwind for Brandon Saad. This was not the season the Blues were hoping for from him. This was not the season he was hoping for from him. But it's not like he didn't get the opportunities. I mean, he played on the top line with Robert Thomas. He played with Brayden Schenn, Kyrou, Holloway. It just wasn't clicking with Brandon Saad. And so I hope the best for him. I mean, he is a perfect third-line winger for a cup contender. We saw that when he was with Colorado prior to signing with the Blues. He was asked to be a top 6 winger and a top-line winger here. And that's just not the role that's best suited for Brandon Saad.
All right, so then we find out yesterday, and you had let us know in the Last Minute Blues podcast group chat that Brayden Schenn was on the block and that the Blues had been potentially talking to teams about Brayden Schenn. Now, I've got a couple of questions here. I thought that he has a no-trade clause at this particular time.
Okay. It's a full no-trade clause that becomes a modified no-trade clause on July 1st.
Okay, now I'm gonna throw some word vomit at you,
I like word vomit.
I
Don't
just
get it
want
on
you to. No, I will. So okay, I understand a couple of things here. One, why a team would want a guy like Brayden Schenn if they were close to a Stanley Cup. Obviously, man, he's going to be somebody that's going to bleed for you, that's going to do the dirty work, that's going to do the things that you need. Totally. He's not going to be a top first or second liner, but he can go somewhere and really make an addition in that bottom 6. And that would free up $6.5 million, whatever, for the Blues. So that part I understand. And I understand that Schenner probably wasn't going to be here when the Blues were really pushing for the cup in the playoffs again. That said, dude, over the course of the last couple of years, there have been very few Blues players that we can rely on night in and night out to go out there and leave it all on the goddamn ice. Excuse me. And I understand that his numbers probably aren't where we wanted him to be offensively, but man, I mean, if there was a scrap to scrap if there was something that needed to be done. You had Brayden Schenn answering the call more so than anybody else, to the point where last year I remember saying, like, this guy's going to break his hand in a fight. Why can't somebody else do this instead of him? So to me, it leaves me really concerned about the Blues' compete level if he would be traded. So I understand why. I'm not even saying that it's a bad thing, but, man, we still have some games left to go. And if Schenner is not out there stirring up the troops, I'm wondering, and I know Jake Neighbors does, but, he's still a young guy. Like, it's concerning to me on that front.
Yeah, well, and that's a totally reasonable concern. So a few things going through my mind with this one. One, there's a reason teams are calling about Brayden Schenn. He's having a great year. Like, people came into the season thinking Brayden Schenn wasn't going to play well, and Brayden Schenn has played beyond a lot of people's expectations. He's been legit one of their best centermen this year for the ups and downs and the injuries for Robert Thomas. So it absolutely makes sense that a team like Toronto is calling. Toronto, Craig Berube, their coach, thinking, yeah, we want this warrior on our team to try and get us through the postseason. So it makes a ton of sense that his name, and I was listening to Elliot Friedman earlier this morning on his podcast. Sounds like there were teams, or at least the Blues were gauging interest on him last year as well. So this kind of feels like a multi-year thing to where they've been looking and saying, like, look, let's see what's out there. And from the Blues' perspective, one, I hate it because he's the heart and soul of your team.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I can look at it and say, I get it. I mean, you've struggled for 3 years. We've talked about how the same message is rolling through that locker room of not being ready and not having the energy level. And you always look at your leadership. Is it the captain's fault? Absolutely not. I think it's every single person's fault in that locker room that they've had their ups and downs. But I also wonder if the Blues are looking this as saying what you said, Donnie. We don't know if he's going to be a part of the team when we're ready to push. You think he's got 3 years after this season, and you're talking 34, 35, 36 years old. Where does he fall in line with this one? And if you find a way to move that, if a team is willing to take that on, now it gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to play with your roster and see what you can make difference. Like, I'll hypothetically here for you. Let's say you're able to move on from that and you're worried about the compete level. The Blues probably look at this and say, well, let's go throw money at Trent Frederick this offseason. Now, again, hypothetical, there's no reporting there, but that's how you bring back the compete, and it's a player that's 26 years old, 25 years old, that fits more into your timeline.
And also has a good relationship with Jim Montgomery, right?
And also is a St. Louis kid. So
Right.
And it's a guy that has been a part of a winning culture. So not saying that Schenn's not that guy, but you always have to be working. And Doug Armstrong is a businessman. You look at this, it has not been working for 3 years. You're at risk of missing the playoffs for 3 consecutive seasons. There's got to be a change. But the only reason you're doing this is if teams are willing to pay the price you're asking. This isn't we're getting rid of Brayden Schenn for a 7th-round draft pick to cut salary. Darren Dreger's words yesterday on the report was it would have to be a mammoth return. So this isn't
So, spitball it.
Yeah.
What do you think that return could be for Schenn?
So you know me, Donnie. I love to just project and kind of think about this, but I'm wondering if you're calling the Toronto Maple Leafs, you ask about Matthew Nyes. You say, you want Schenn? We want Matthew Nyes. Now, everybody listening right now is probably like, you're an idiot, Alex. Why would they do that? They want to win a cup. And Matthew Nyes is awesome. Matthew Nyes is going to be a restricted free agent this upcoming year, which means you have to pay Matthew Nyes. But guess who you also have to pay, Donnie?
Which one of the 4? Oh, is it
Mitch Marner.
Oh, Mitch Marner.
So Mitch Marner is going to probably get somewhere between, for how the cap's moving up and what Mikko Rantanen just got. And by the way, Marner's a top 10 player right now in points. Probably getting somewhere between $13 and $14 million a year. You're going to pay that. You've already paid Matthews. You're paying Nylander. You've got a lot of players locked up. Now, Tavares does come off of the book, so it's money in, money out, but they've got cap space next year. Matthew Nyes doesn't win you a Stanley Cup. Guys like Brayden Schenn win you a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And so my thought process with it was, do you get rid of something young to help you win now, and then you readjust in the offseason if you're Toronto? And again, totally hypothetical, I have no idea.
Right.
But if I'm the Blues, that's what I'm talking about. That makes my team better. I'm going to go get Matthew Nyes, who played with Jimmy Snuggerud in Minnesota. That's a 23-year-old winger who I'm going to have to pay probably because of the RFA status, but is a big dude that plays physical and he goes to the front of the net. They want a centerman who can benefit their team. They've got a lot of wingers. They need somebody who can push them over the top to get through. So if I'm the Blues, that's what I'm looking at. And you know what? Toronto probably says, hell no. Then you're not moving Brayden Schenn. You're only moving Brayden Schenn if it benefits your team. This isn't a let's get rid of the captain because our team's bad and we want to be worse this year. You're moving on for Brayden Schenn because you want to try and upgrade your team faster, which is why you start to kind of look at it and say, what can you get for him?
You talk about trades that, you look to truly benefit both teams. And that, to me, or something around that, is a trade that benefits both teams. As the Blues get younger and as Toronto is pushing for the cup.
I'll give you a great example, Donnie. Dallas Stars traded a young Jerome McGinley, who they had high expectations for, to Calgary for Joe Nieuwendyk. Why did they do that? They wanted to win a Stanley Cup.
To get him over the hump.
And Joe Nieuwendyk came in, and they won the Stanley Cup. Curbs and I were talking about this yesterday off air. Calgary Flames traded a young Brett Hall for Rob Ramage and Rick Wamsley. Why? Needed to get them over the hump. What did they do the following season that they traded Brett Hall?
Win the Cup.
They won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Do you like trading guys who you are hoping to be great? No. But if there's something in front of you that says, that guy gets us a Stanley Cup this year, or if anything, that guy gets us past the second round this year. Because look at what Toronto's going to be facing. The Florida Panthers, who you just saw last night, they are a hellstorm when they're on fire.
That's a bunch of bullies right there.
The New York Rangers got JT Miller. They're playing some bully hockey right
sure
now.
Are.
Right? Like, these teams aren't afraid to play physical. Who's the physical specimen on the Toronto Maple Leafs? And don't say Ryan Reeves, because Ryan Reeves doesn't play.
I mean, that would be the only one that I would
Max
think of.
Domi? Like Max Domi? And he is, don't get me wrong, that's not Brayden Schenn. And they tried it with Ryan O'Reilly a couple of years. It was a good addition for them. It didn't work. I think they need a little nastiness to their style. And that's why I wonder if they're looking at this saying, we need Brayden Schenn. But when you need something, you get desperate. And when you get desperate, you make trades that you may not want to. And that's why I have no clue if that happens. Again, they could call and say, hell no, we're not giving you Matthew Nyes. But if I'm the Blues, that's how I'm moving him. You're giving me something that plays on my team next year that makes me a better team. I'm not trading him for a draft pick or some prospect that's not going to be here in 5 years.
So I was listening to Curbside on the way into work Wednesday morning after the game on Tuesday night. And Curbs was making a point to Joey that he wanted to see Robert Thomas's minutes pushed a little bit higher, upwards of in the 21 to 22 minutes, finding him ways to get extra shifts, to get extra face-ups, sneaking in little ways to get Robert Thomas more.
Yeah.
And he pitched this to Joey. And Joey's response, and listen, I overthink everything. I take pieces of, I imagine things, but Joey, there was a pause, and Joey said something to the effect of that Robert Thomas's conditioning was not to the level that he would be able to play an extra minute or two.
Right. And,
dude, that really alarmed the bejesus out of me because in my head, Robert Thomas is the next captain,
right.
is the next guy, is the next really. And to hear Joey say that, I did not love that. And then on top of that, okay, so on top of that, and I didn't really think about this until after I'd heard Joey say this, but on Tuesday night, in the overtime loss to Edmonton, there was a particular play where Thomas was on the ice, and he sort of like his hands got all big, and he like looked like he was kind of showing up Colton Parayko for dumping in the puck when Colton had to change. And in thinking about this in hindsight, I think that's kind of clown behavior. That's like showing up your friggin' teammate.
Yeah.
And so now, over the course of the last day or so, I'm starting to wonder, is there an issue with Robert Thomas?
I think there's a frustration body language issue with Robert Thomas right now.
How can he not see that and be in the league this long and know that that's not okay, man? You don't see guys do that a lot.
No, you don't. Now, I will pump the brakes a little bit because for people that watched the game last night against Florida, Matthew Tkachuk did it. Matthew Tkachuk in the first period, if you remember correctly, it was that Joel Hofer toe save, and it was a net front presence by Matthew Tkachuk, and they missed the net. And Matthew Tkachuk at the whistle, up at the sky, was like, you got to be kidding me. And that's a lot of what Robert Thomas has done. The difference, though, is when Matthew Tkachuk does that, he goes on to score 2 goals and an assist in the game. When Robert Thomas has done it this season, specifically in the month of January, because that's where it's been most present, in my opinion, talking about like 5-6 points in the month of January. And that is a massive difference. Your best players have to be your best players, Donnie. And what I think we've noticed in these last 2 games is they're not at the same level, which, no surprise, it's Connor freaking McDavid and Leon Draisaitl,
right,
and Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Reinhart. But last year I saw Robert Thomas, and I'm like, that guy could be an Alexander Barkov.
Dude, he was locking those cats down for the most part.
And here's the thing. Thomas played the most minutes of a forward last night. He played almost 21 minutes last night. So to Curbs' point, he did extend his shifts to the next level. And look at him. He picked up an assist last night. But the body language, I think, is something that has been really noticeable. And it's not just me and you seeing it on the television or Curbs and Joey talking about it. Jim Montgomery has talked about it. Cam Fowler has talked about it. A lot of guys have just talked about how, like, yeah, you can't get down after things like that. Not specifically about Thomas, just about the team. But the one quote that stuck out to me about Jim Montgomery was, you can get upset, but you have to stay in the shift. You can't get upset and say, oh, you got to be kidding me, and then end the shift. And that's what you're referencing on that Tuesday game against Edmonton, because I know what you're talking about. Thomas was skating in, turns the puck over, it gets picked off of his stick, and it goes right to Colton Parayko, who's at the bench. And you got to make a decision there if you're Colton Parayko. You can skate with it, but the moment you do, there's a chance that other guy steps onto the ice because he's expecting a line change, and you got too many men. Or you shoot it in and get off the ice, because what Colton Parayko's mindset was McDavid's going to be coming off of the ice. I got to get off so that I can get back on when he comes back on. So Broberg comes on, but if you watch it, when Parayko shoots the puck back in, which is what you're supposed to do, Thomas kind of does what you mentioned. He flings the hands up in the air, and it's like, oh, man, are you kidding me? We got to end the shift, and he goes back to the bench. Well, the issue there is when he goes back to the bench, McDavid's got the puck on his stick and is starting to turn on turbo mode up the ice. Thomas is going off the ice, and 2 guys are coming on, and by that time, Connor McDavid's already in your zone and able to skate through a couple of guys. So I don't mind the frustration when you miss the open net, because right now, to be honest, Thomas is just snake bitten.
Right.
Thomas is just snake bitten right now.
Yeah.
He's missing wide open nets. That's the frustration taking over. I don't mind that. The problem is when it extends into the shift and it affects the game, and that's what we saw in Edmonton. I'll give him credit, though. Florida, he did not have that issue. Florida, he was engaged that entire game. It's just that final shift. Your best players weren't better than the other team. That's where, to me, the biggest problem is right now. It's not so much the frustration taking over on the ice and seeing the body language. Do I like it? No. But I think leadership, Montgomery, they handle those kind of things. My concern is that's 2 games now where best on best, yours has not been able to get the job done. Last night I thought was a perfect example when it was Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich on the ice against Reinhart, Tkachuk, Barkov. And what happened? They were able to take 2 pucks away from you along the boards to keep the play alive, make 2 cross-ice passes, and then get 2 shots off in the slot to beat your goaltender with 12 seconds left. That's the difference right now for this Blues team. Their top guys just aren't playing to the expectations of top guys in the NHL.
What is going on with Pavel Buchnevich?
I think Pavel Buchnevich and Robert Thomas are kind of tied together right now, man. I think both are a little snake-bitten, and I think both are trying to force chemistry. And it's just not coming. It's just not coming. When they split those up, I think a lot of people saw it as a punishment from that Utah game. Maybe some of it was. I think some of it was also, like, neither of these guys are getting the offensive production right now. Do we change it up and see if we can get something else? Right now, you've played 9 different players on the line with Thomas and Buchnevich this season, Donnie. It's been everybody from Saad to Neighbors to Texier to Kyrou to Bolduc to Holloway, and none of them's worked. And now I'm starting to wonder, do you change the line completely? Do you just go from Tom? We always go in pairs, right? That's like our mindset, because Berube kind of said that. Hitch used to say that. I don't know if the pair is Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich anymore. I think you're still looking for that second pair with Robert Thomas, and now you're going to be searching for another pair for Pavel Buchnevich. Because we're talking 15-plus games of these guys where they've been snake-bitten, but it just doesn't feel like the chemistry's there when they're on the ice in the offensive zone.
It feels like, man, when I do kind of a back and forth during the game as I'll watch some on TV, and then I've got the radio on because I god dang love Curbs' radio call.
Oh, yeah.
And I know the guy that does the pre and post game, and he's really good too.
I've heard he's kind of a handsome fella. I don't know. Got a face for radio.
But, dude, it feels like there's long stretches of time throughout games here in the last month or so where I feel like I hardly hear Pavel Buchnevich's name even mentioned.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like he's not even, like, getting into the thick of things.
But he's not shooting the puck as much. Like, when I go back and look at Pavel Buchnevich when he was been his best, he shoots 3, 4, 5 times a night. Last night he had 1 shot on goal and 2 shot attempts. And again, I really feel like this is doing too much. I feel like these guys are in their head right now because they know the opportunity that they let float away in the month of January, and they're starting to press. And I think Joey referenced this before. God, I don't remember which game it was. I think it was the Colorado game. And Joey was talking to Brayden Schenn, and Schenn said, yeah, he's like, guys are walking on eggshells. Guys are acting like it's the trade deadline. Because remember, that was Brandon Saad had just been contract terminated. Perunovic was traded away. And Schenn was like, I don't know why people are acting like this, like it's the trade deadline. Like, what's happening right now? Who did he say? One of the defensemen, I don't remember which one, was talking to Joey and said, I've never seen a team get so down on themselves after 1 goal going in. So I think Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich are once again trying to figure out how to handle this type of snowball. And when you're the top guys, you're relied upon the most. And that's where I feel like they're still trying to figure this one out.
Yeah, and one of the things that I have to keep in mind as well, how old is Robert Thomas?
25? Yeah, because Kyrie's 26.
Okay.
Yeah. He's not 33 years old.
There is maturation that happens at all levels.
Well, and that goes into the conditioning comment that Joey had. You know, Donnie, he's been in the league since he's 18 years old, right? 18, 19 years old when he was here for that Stanley Cup run. He's 25 years old. Nathan McKinnon didn't take until he was about 24, 25 to figure out how to put his body in the condition to be a guy who plays 22, 23 minutes a night on the ice, right?
Right. Some
guys take a while to figure out what type of player they have to be. And to me, this might be the season that Robert Thomas looks at it and says, yeah, I need to be the guy that can play. I mean, he's averaging 19 minutes and 39 minutes a night. Like, it's not like this guy's going 15 minutes a night and like, I'm winded.
Sure.
He's averaging a lot.
Right.
But if you're him, at least if I was him, I'm looking at that Panthers game and that Oilers game and be like, that's the next level for me. That's my next gear. 21 minutes a night, like Leon freaking Draisaitl or Connor McDavid. 20 minutes a night, like Barkov. Mm-hmm. Those guys are always able to extend that extra shift. And that's where I feel like Robert Thomas might still be figuring it out. But again, 25 years old, a lot of people don't even figure out who they are in terms of the diet that they have to be, the body plan that they have to be on until they get a little bit older than that. So it's not like we're talking about a dude who's missed his prime. He's still pre-prime, if not right in the middle of it.
Yeah. I think one of the things to me that's such a bummer is to continue to see the West and the teams in that, that weird middle that the Blues are in. There has not been a team that has taken the puck, I guess, and skated and really ran away with it. I mean, Colorado seems to be since that trade.
Yeah, they've distanced themselves, in my opinion. They've got goaltending issues, but Martin Necas has made that team a powerhouse.
And they'll make the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
But even Vancouver, like nobody has ran with the Blues. Even just playing a little above average would absolutely be.
Yep.
Right there.
You needed a 5-game win streak at some point in the month of January, and that's why that Utah Hockey Club game, the one that you lost after the 2 Calgary, that was the bummer.
Yeah, man.
Because if you win that one, you've won 3 in a row for the first time, and then if I'm not mistaken, you come home and you start that 3-game homestand to where, you played Vegas. You beat Vegas in overtime.
That's right.
That would have been 4 in a row. You come back home to take on that Vegas team. Who knows what happens? I got to imagine you're a pretty confident group after winning 4 in a row that you're not going to allow a goal 12 seconds into the Vegas Golden Knights. And then that started the spur of losing 5 of 6 or 6 of 7. Yeah. So, you needed one of those win streaks. I'm with you. Vancouver's been a 500 team. Utah's been a 500 team. Calgary's been the one that's actually distanced themselves.
They really have, man.
Yeah.
And they're making deals. They're not
Nope.
selling. They're friggin' buying at
Their
this
GM,
particular point.
Craig Conroy, was the one that said, he's like, these guys played well, and they deserved to have some reinforcements.
Is he GM of the year?
Ooh.
And I know that's a tough.
No, that's a good question.
But I mean, nobody thought that Calgary was going to be doing this still at this point in the year.
Right.
And I know that, they've gotten great goaltending and things like that. But this, to me, I mean, this is a team that in the last few years has lost Johnny Hockey, a Kachuk. I mean, for Christ's sake, credit where it's due.
I'm like trying to go through. I think it's going to be the Ottawa Senators GM, Steve Stamkos.
Okay.
If they make the playoffs, because no, I'm sorry. It's the Capitals. Logan Thompson, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Jacob Chikrin. Like, honestly, if you're a Blues fan, look at what Washington just did this offseason. And I was talking to Bill Lindsay about this, NHL Network guy, former NHLer, on our pregame show last night. Because I asked him, like, do teams still need superstars to win in the NHL?
Yeah.
And he goes...
His answer made me feel better.
Yeah, he's like, it doesn't... Not necessarily. He goes... Yeah, they help, but he's like, if you build an identity and have 4 lines that can roll consistently through a game, you're just as competitive as most teams. Now, Washington has Alex freaking Ovechkin, who's going to break Gretzky's record, but think of what they did that offseason. First of all, the guys that were already there, Dylan Strome, who was basically called a I'm trying to think of the right word. He was a bust.
Yeah.
And look at what he's a number 1 center for them. Pierre-Luc Dubois was traded away because he was a problem. He's their legit number 2 centerman. Jacob Chikrin, they go get Logan Thompson. They have a couple of younger players in Connor McMichael and that Alexei Protas. Man, Washington took a team, they were like, we're good, we need to be better. And they went out and made moves. If you're a Blues fan, if you're an optimist, what they just did, you hope that the Blues can do this upcoming offseason.
And I remember saying when they were doing all that stuff, what are they doing?
We thought the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade was stupid. We're stupid, Donnie.
I don't know anything about anything. All right, so a couple of questions here in closing. One, 4 Nations gets started next Wednesday.
Yes.
What is your level of excitement for this?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say a 7.
Okay.
Yeah. 1, because it's not the freaking All-Star game. Like, I'm sorry, NHL, but
I hate that.
Your Pro Bowl level All-Star game. Like, I don't care.
It's unwatchable.
It's terrible.
I can't stand it. And even, you know what else, man? I used to, and maybe this was just because I was a kid, but I used to love the skills competition.
Yep.
And I don't feel myself loving the skills competition
because
as much anymore.
They make it too much. They make it too much theater compared to like actual skills that you used to watch. But I don't like the 3-on-3. I think it's watered down. So that's a big reason why. And then I'm so excited for the Olympics next year that this is my appetizer to it. These are the chicken wings before the actual meal. Like, I can't freaking wait for the Olympics, and I hope that Russia is allowed to play in the Olympics next year, because that there's too many good players that we're going to miss out on. Like, I want to see Ovechkin one more Olympic run. I want to see Kaprizov. Like, I want those guys.
Dude, that is my only, and I completely understand why they're not a part of 4 Nations.
Totally.
I completely get it, but that is my only hang-up with this.
Yeah.
Because having Russia in this, Russia, U.S., probably Sweden and Canada,
I know.
Baby. Or no, you probably have 6.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you'd have to make it 6. Who would be probably Slovakia?
What is it now? Czechia?
Czechia? Maybe do you combine? I don't know if you can combine because they're 2 different ones, but like...
I don't think if I am in another country that I'm going to be okay with them going, hey, let's get these other guys in here too.
This is just me assuming that the Czechs are cool with the Slovaks, and they're like, hey, let's play together. Let's combine for one big major team to take down Russia. Like, maybe I'm just assuming there.
But I sure hope so too, man.
Yeah.
I very much hope so as well.
It's the one thing that, to me, is going to ruin the Olympics if you don't get to see Russia in it.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm by no means trying to get political on this podcast. I want to see those players. Because if you've got an Olympics to where it's Canada and Finland and Sweden and U.S., like, those are the 4 juggernauts. But give them somebody else in there, you know? Like, you don't...
Absolutely.
No disrespect to, like, France and all of those teams, Italy that'll play in the Olympics. But, man, like, you got to have another team that's a juggernaut, and that's where Russia falls into.
100%. When do you think, you know, I would assume that this NHL trade deadline is not going to be like the last couple of days in the NBA where it's been popping off left, right, and center. But when do you start to see those trades made? Because when is the trade deadline?
March 7th. It's either 7th or the 9th. I think it's the 7th.
So we're a few weeks away.
Yeah.
So when do you? How do you? What do you think the activities?
I think it goes quiet in the Four Nations tournament, and I mean it's been quiet since those trades have gone down. I don't think there's going to be trades until the deadline. Okay. I don't, at least major ones.
Because there are still teams that are figuring out whether they're in or they're out.
Yeah,
is that part of it?
Yeah. I mean, even if you're St. Louis and you're down on this team, you're still 6 points out of a playoff spot because Calgary lost last night. So, like, you're not out of it. And Utah's in it. Calgary's in it. Vancouver's in it. I don't know if Seattle considers themselves in it. They're probably the one. The West has more teams that are out of it than the East. Mm-hmm. The East, I think you're probably talking about 3, maybe 4 teams that consider themselves out of it. And what are they going to sell? Like, one of those teams are the Pittsburgh Penguins. What are the Penguins selling?
Right.
You know?
Buffalo.
I don't even know if Buffalo thinks they're sellers. Buffalo thinks they could climb back into this one. So, like, I don't know. I hope we see a major trade deadline. I don't know if we see any massive trades. We won't see trades to the ilk of Mikko Rantanen, I'll say that.
Okay.
You're not going to see any hockey trades take place at the deadline. You'll see a couple of big names get moved, but I don't think anything happens until, like, it's typically the week of the deadline. There's always teams that try and get it done, like, the first or second day of that week before the actual deadline. But, yeah, I don't expect any flurries of moves between now and then.
Right on. All right, so just I don't feel like we missed anything. Do we?
I don't think so.
I feel like we
talked
covered
about your great shirt, the Marvel Avengers.
Dude, I'm telling you what. My secret is I will not pay more than $10 for a T-shirt at Macy's.com. So this shirt was $8. And
you're a legend.
Dude, well, no,
I used to do that at thrift shops.
Yeah.
I'd go and find me a nice, like, Kenny Rogers shirt at a thrift shop.
Well, here's the thing about that. My daughter, if I say to Ava, hey, or if Ava says to me, hey, Dad, I need a pair of pants, she wants to try to find the pants at a thrift store before we go to the mall.
Smart kid.
So, dude, not only smart, but thanks, kid, because you're saving me a ton of dough.
Yep.
And so, like, she'll be like, hey, can we go to a couple of thrift stores? And I'm like, hell yeah, when she needed a dress for the last dance that she went to. God. We found one seriously for $25. God,
that's awesome.
And she loved it. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this will work. Like, she loved it. So, dude, we are actively sifting through those thrift stores, man, and I will not turn down a great T-shirt. But what I don't like, though, is when I go to a thrift store and I see them, like, having something marked up really high, and I'm like, okay, this is cool that you have an Avett Brothers 2014 concert T-shirt, but I'm not paying $30 for it, okay? I'm just not.
Now get this crap online for $15.
So hopefully next podcast we'll have JR back, and hopefully his son and that team whoop some ass in Chicago this weekend. Yeah. All right. So for our dude Jeremy Rutherford, who was out on the road, our buddy Jeff Burton, who was in our hearts always, Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, I'm Donnie Fandango from 105.7 The Point and 106.5 The Arch. Thanks for listening to us, and as always, let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues Podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.